So to start, I was actually background. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for Wednesday, October 24th. If you'll please rise with me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Chair Clark, Vice Chair Perry, Commissioner Armbruster, here. Commissioner Lesner-Buxton, here. Commissioner Longstreet, here. Commissioner Martinez-Cohen, Commissioner McGill.
Here. Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda? I don't see any written communications. So we're going to move to public comment. Any member of the public may address the Commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the Commission. The total amount of time for public comments will be 15 minutes. And I believe we have one person for public comment. Kenneth Locke.
My name is Kenneth Locke. I went before the City Council, did public comments before them the past couple of weeks. I've been in town here for about 20 years, and I came up with a whole new teaching method for tennis. I call it Tennisance, or the Tennisance method. It's the Renaissance of tennis. And the idea that now here in this community, I can actually provide people with this new education through tennis. And it turns out it's everything that tennis is right now. So my teaching method, it's not a sport, it's more of it's the exercise of tennis. And you become ambidextrous, not one arm. So the idea of holistic health. The idea of eye-hand coordination. And it's kind of funny, can you develop eye-hand coordination through just one arm? I'm not sure if you can actually do it or whatever. If it's better to do it with both arms. There might be some exceptions, but the idea that that skill level and developing that skill in relation to the whole body. And the idea is that the negative when it comes to developing one arm, it actually kind of retards, just the idea of just a person developing one side of their body, and then the idea that it's just a game, and the whole idea of what they're going to lack is they're going to lack an education, because actually it turns out right now the teachers at the Municipal Tennis Center are not actually providing their students with what we can call an education. It's what they're teaching them to do is how to play a game, and my new teaching method kind of brings us and raises the bar. I've talked to Nancy there before in the past, and she's aware of me. And I just, if anybody's interested in doing this, yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Very much. Anyone here for Youth Council report?
Chair
Welcome.
Clark, we have Roberta Payan, who's going to do it on behalf of the Youth Council today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My first time reporting for the Youth Council. Excuse my nervousness. My name is Roberta Payan. I'm one of the youth advisors to the Santa Barbara Youth Council. I'm here to report to you that we just winded down our recruitment. We have 11 applications right now, and we actually have 3 openings, 2 alternative school and 1 private school. And we're really happy to report that we actually have applicants from the alternative schools this recruitment process. It's really hard to get them to apply, but we got them this time, so we're really happy about that. Monday night, we hosted Santa Barbara Unified School District Candidates Forum over at the Davis Center. We had a crowd of about 60 attendees. It was good. Unfortunately, some of the candidates chose not to attend, which disappointed several of the youth council members and the other youth that helped organize the event. But we were pleased that the 3 that did attend, Ismael, Ricardo, and Rose Munoz, they all showed up. So we're really happy that the 3 of them showed up and addressed the questions from the communities and parents and families. In addition to that, I would like to say a thank you to the Metropolitan Transportation District, MTD. I reached out to them because a lot of our youth council members depend on public transportation to get to the meetings. Some of them come as far as Dos Pueblos and Galitas. So I reached out to Hillary Blackerby. She's a marketing and community relations person. I sent her an email. She called me back within 20 minutes. And they gave us 30 passes, 30 10-ride passes at the value of about $300 for our youth council members. So we were really pleased with that. So I just want to say thank you to the MTD and Hillary Blackerby. And then I'll wind it up with, we will be attending the National League of Cities Summit in Los Angeles this year. We're really happy about that we're able to find it in our budget to attend. It'll be myself along with 5 members attending the conference, where a lot of other youth councils and commissions will be there, and we'll learn about what they're working on and let them know about some of our projects and bring back some of that knowledge here to Santa Barbara and share it with our councils. So we're really excited about being able to attend that. So I want to thank the Parks and Recreation for allowing us to attend the NLC Summit. And I'd also like to say thank you to Jacob, who always attends our meetings. We really appreciate a representative from the Parks and Recreation Commission being there. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? No.
No, congratulations on your recruitment and your forum.
Thank you.
We've come to Commissioner Committee assignment reports, and I'll start down at Jacob's end.
Yes, I attended the youth council, and they're doing great work, and Roberta said it all.
Commissioner McGill.
Okay, well, see, Park Foundation meeting was canceled for October. We did meet in September, reviewed financials with nothing to report, and also discussed upcoming newsletter and funding ideas for the coming year, and I owe you an email.
Thank you. It's okay. Ms. Martinez-Cohen?
Yes, I attended the regularly scheduled Creeks Committee meeting last week. We went over the capital improvement budget program for 2020 to 2025. There's a lot of good projects that they're working on. A lot of them we have heard about. They actually have about $13 million in projects for FY19 that are kind of happening and coming to a close, and so they'll be adding new projects for the 20 to 25 time period. So there's a lot of good stuff going on. It was a really informative meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Armbruster?
I unfortunately was unable to attend the golf committee meeting.
I attended the Neighborhood Advisory Council where we received the report that we'll receive tonight about the police station, and also made recommendations for CDBG projects at Bonet Park, the restroom project, Eastside Park, the accessibility issues will be dealt with, and at the West Side Center and Oak Park Playgrounds, there'll be some rubber replacement under the equipment. Also attended the Sea Level Rise Committee where we worked on the guiding principles that will help us form the adaptations and decide on the adaptations to deal with sea level rise. And I would encourage everyone in the community to go on the city's website and stay abreast of what's happening with the sea level rise vulnerability studies and adaptations. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Perry?
Forgive me for being late today. Was unable to attend the arts and crafts meeting this last month.
I, too, was out of town with the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting, and I regretted that because there were so many trees, and I got so lost today. I'm trying to find them all, but we'll discuss those shortly. I did participate in some of the Creek Week activities that our Creeks Department held, including the Land Shark tour that went around different permeable paver projects and different restoration projects in our city, and I was very impressed and grateful that we had the Creek Department advocating for our water quality and environment. And with that, we will move to commission and staff communications.
Chair Clark and commissioners, I'm going to jump right to service awards. And since we didn't have a meeting in September, I've got a few things to share with you. In September, Jose Ramirez, who's an equipment operator, received his 5-year PIN in the city. And we had 2 staff get recognized for 15 years. Patty Herrera, who works in our Parks Division. In fact, she's integral to forestry and street tree meetings. And then Rudy Saldana, who started in golf, came over to Parks, went back to golf, and now is in Parks, also got 15 years. For October, you probably have heard that Mark Sewell has transitioned to a new position in the finance department, but he did spend his first 5 years in Parks and Recreation. So he received his 5 years just as he was moving over to City Hall. Brett Volpe is a senior tree trimmer. He also received 5-year recognition. And last but not least, I would like to acknowledge that Judith McCaffrey was acknowledged for her 20 years of service to the city of Santa Barbara, all in Parks and Recreation. First as a recreation supervisor, and I believe Judith's been a recreation manager for 12 years, something like that, 12 years. And it's great achievement, has been with us for many years as we've evolved and we've dealt with difficult issues, fun issues, and moved the department forward. So I want to take the time to also recognize her for her 20 years of service.
Yeah.
I'd like to appreciate the work that Judith has done with the NAC. We were floundering a bit, and she's got it on track with the reports, and the committee is quite pleased. So thank you very much for that.
I'd like to echo my gratitude for what you do for the department. You're the first face I got to know when I started volunteering, and I think what you do is amazing. Thank you. And we've all read the summary of council actions. Does anyone have any questions? What? Jude, talk. I just assume that people don't want to get up in public and talk because I can't stand it.
No, well, my colleague Rich Hanna, who was recognized a couple months ago, I know he wasn't expecting to be called up, but I was expecting to be called up today. So I had an opportunity to think about it. So I definitely did want to say a few words, but just a few words. So I just wanted to thank you all very much and just say that working for the City Parks and Recreation Department is a gift, an incredible gift that I received 20 years ago, this Friday. And it was 20 years ago that I reported to my new job at the Cabrillo Pavilion Arts Center as the Cultural Arts Supervisor. And to kind of put that time frame in perspective, it was just a few weeks later that we were celebrating the first birthday of the Chase Palm Park expansion. And I'm so appreciative of so many opportunities I've had throughout these past 20 years, and I've been very blessed to have a job that I truly love. But it's really been a team effort, though, so I'd really be remiss if I didn't acknowledge all my hardworking team members and all the wonderful volunteers like you and all the members of the public that I've really had the pleasure to work with these past 20 years. It's really been a lot of fun, and I thank you for recognizing me this afternoon.
What's your most favorite thing that you've done with the department?
Oh, goodness. There's a lot of things. I guess probably the most favorite thing I've done was starting concerts in the park. 2019 will be the 20th year. And that's just something that thousands of our community members families and individuals have loved. And I'm reminded of that every summer when I see people there at Chase Palm Park having a really marvelous time and enjoying time together in our beautiful park.
Thank you for making that happen every summer. Yeah. I love it too.
Oh, thanks very much.
And now, summary of council actions. Did anyone have any questions on that?
Just a comment. It was nice to see, it looks like the money is going the right direction at golf now. We had an addition to the budget. That's good to see.
Minutes. Would anyone like to make a motion? We've all read them. Mm-hmm. We have.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to waive the reading of the that would be August 22nd, and approve the minutes.
Moved. The Street Tree Advisory Committee items. Yep. Oh, there you are.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, the first item is 1202 Diana Road. The tree is actually located on the East Coda side of the property. This property is going through review right now to improve the interior. It's a little postage stamp property in the middle of the two streets behind homes, so it's difficult to see. The Historic Landmarks Commissioners looked at this for some historic structures and internal landscaping. Came to light that this setback tree needed to be reviewed by the Parks and Recreation Commission for consideration. The project is required to widen the driveway access on the Coda side to provide fire access into the property, and that necessitates the removal of this tree. The committee determined that that was a reasonable development of the property and recommends that the commission approve this removal.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Downey?
No, I would make a motion that we concur with the recommendation for the Street Tree Advisory Committee for the removal of the Brazilian pepper tree at 1202 Diana Road.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, the next item is 1427 Olive Street. There's a Magnolia grandiflora in the front setback adjacent to a retaining wall for the property. The retaining wall has been pushed out by the roots of the tree and has been damaged. The applicant is requesting to remove this tree and replace it with another similar tree farther away from the building and the wall in the front yard. After submitting the original application, they also determined that their gas line runs directly underneath the tree on that side. So another reason that they'd like to have it removed. The committee reviewed the application and did a site visit. They determined the proposal to replace the tree in the yard is acceptable and recommend approval on the condition a tree that can achieve at least 15 feet in height be planted in the front setback.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? No? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the recommendation to conditionally approve this application for the removal of the Magnolia grandiflora to be replaced by a tree capable of achieving 15 feet.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, at 801 Sea Ranch Drive, there's a queen palm that is unfortunately located on top of the septic tank for the property, and the roots have 2 times compromised the integrity of the septic tank. The applicant is requesting to remove the tree to preserve that structure. They've had to have it dug out, and the committee felt that that was a reasonable request and recommend approval of the removal of this queen palm on the condition that a tree that can achieve 15 feet in height, be a canopy tree that can achieve 15 feet in height, be planted somewhere within the front setback. The front setback for this property is 35 feet, and there's 5 foot of road right-of-way, so somewhere within the first 40 feet of the property.
I think that that area would greatly benefit from a canopy tree as opposed to the lone palm. Does anyone else have any questions or comments they'd like to make?
No, I would make a motion to, again, agree with the committee's recommendation to remove the existing tree on the condition that it be replaced with a tree that can achieve 15 feet in height.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Chair Clark and Commissioners, the next item on the agenda is 503 Arena Street. The applicant is requesting to remove 2 trees at this property. One is a Brazilian pepper. The second is a coast live oak. The application misidentifies one of the trees. The coastal live oak appears to have been a volunteer and started there unintentionally. It is pushing against the retaining wall for the adjoining property and compromising that wall. The applicant is requesting to remove both trees to prevent that wall from falling. The committee reviewed the materials and did a site visit. They determined that the wall is indeed compromised by the trees and recommends approval on the condition that a tree 15 feet in, with the potential to achieve 15 feet in height be planted as a replacement.
Yes, I think that those trees are in an unfortunate location. I would move that we concur with the street tree advisory recommendation for conditional removal at 503 Arena Street of the coastal live oak and Brazilian pepper on condition that it be replaced with one tree that can achieve 15 feet.
Aye.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, this item is returning to you. At the July meeting, the Commission reviewed this application to remove these 4 evergreen pear trees. The request is based on the fire blight disease that they have, their aesthetics, and the cost to fight the disease. At the July meeting, the Commission voted to ask the applicants to consider alternatives to what they were proposing. They did so and have come back with a proposal. Their request is still to remove all 4 trees, and their proposal is to replace with, I believe it's 11 palm tree species. The committee reviewed that and determined that I'm going to get this correct. They recommend the Commission approve the 3 trees farthest to the south. Those would be the 3 in your foreground in this photograph, and deny the one farthest to the north, which is at the very right edge of the photograph, on the condition that the applicant replace with 1 street tree at a location to be determined by staff.
I have a question after reading the applicants. It mentioned replacing with 19 palms of varying height. I mean, they seem to address the issues we had with canopy in that area. Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
The Chair Clark and Commissioner Longstreet, the committee felt that broadleaf canopy trees that provide additional benefits to sequester more carbon than the palms do would still be important. So that's why they're recommending 1 street tree replace. It still would allow for them to plant their proposed palm trees without impacting those palms.
Commissioner McGill?
Do you want to go first? So I guess I'm, given the amount of attention and care that the applicants appear to have paid to the street tree committees and commissions' concerns, I'm curious to know why the recommendation is to only allow for removal of 3 trees, why the 4th one is to remain, especially with the olive tree being planted as a mitigation.
Chair Clark and Commissioner McGill, the committee felt that by retaining 1 of the trees, it allowed time for the olive tree to grow canopy, and the 4th tree could be removed at a later date without much loss to the community.
So I take it that the implication there is that there would be a favorable disposition if the 4th tree came up for removal at a later date. I mean, that's kind of the implication of what you're saying. That's why I'm probing a little bit.
Chair Clark and Commissioner McGill, if at some point in the future the property owner came forward with another application for that 4th tree, the commission at that time, which may be this commission or another commission, would be advised of the work effort that had been done prior to this application to maintain at least the knowledge base for the decisions that have been made over time. Granted, what a future commission or Street Tree Advisory Committee would recommend, we don't know. But given that that's their intent, that intent would continue to be communicated.
If there's no other questions or comments from the commission at this time, we do have a speaker slip here for Mr. Poulsen, the property owner. Please come up.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Since my initial appearance in July, I have received quite an education in urban forestry. And I'm pleased to say that the result of the work we've done with the Street Tree Advisory Committee has led us to a point where I'm very happy to support the recommendation they're bringing forth. I understand the desire to see a street tree there. In fact, when I moved in, there was a street tree which the city took out because it was being squeezed by the pear trees as they were growing 30 years ago. So I'm totally understanding that that is a reasonable thing to put there. By having the stated mitigation being that street tree instead of a long list of palm trees, it gives us some flexibility in our development of that palm tree landscape without having to talk to a lawyer about whether we are in exact compliance. And I like to have that informality about it. The one thing, Tim was a little incorrect when he said it's the 3 pear trees in the foreground that are going. In fact, the one that's closest to the camera is the one that's staying on the corner. We are viewing this from the north towards the mountain. So the ones that are going are the 2 in the middle, and the one that's kind of less visible in the background. As I said, we are happy to support the recommendation, and we hope that the Commission is too.
Chair Clark, if I may, he's correct. I misstated. It was the tree in the foreground that would recommended to stay.
Make a motion?
Before you make a motion, I want to thank you for the incredible amount of work you've done with our department and Mr. Downey and the obvious thought you put into it. I've never, in my 4 years here, I haven't seen someone put that much thought and consideration into their plan. And you're also willing to look at it from a community perspective, not just your own. And that's really impressive. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I would also like to echo. I think it's really quite exciting, the work that you've done, and look forward to seeing how this moves on over the coming years. But with that, I've given myself quite a compliment. I would like to move that we support the recommendation to partially approve the application to remove the 3 Pyrus Kawakamis. Is that even close? Evergreen pear trees, and on the condition that the 4th one remain and that a street tree, a canopy street tree, be planted, and I believe it's an olive, at a location to be determined by staff.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, the next item is 1402 Alameda Padre Serra. There are 2 Corymbra citadora lemon-scented gum trees. It appears to be 3, but the second trunk on one of the trees is actually a basal sprout that was developed, so it is only 2 trees. The request is to remove the trees for they've been losing some limbs. They lost a large limb onto Alameda Padre Serra a while back and had dropped a number of limbs onto the parking space under this tree on their personal property, causing dents to their vehicles. The fire department is advising to keep the leaves off the roof, and so that's part of their proposal for the removal, is that would assist in allowing them to keep the leaves off of the roof. Staff discussed these trees with them and indicated ways in which they could prune the trees to mitigate for the leaves on the roof, although not completely prevent them from getting on the roof. The committee recommends that the Commission deny the removals. They did state, however, that they would be supportive of removal of that second smaller trunk on the one tree to help mitigate its lean over the roadway. So the recommendation is to deny the removals.
Questions or comments?
I guess I'll just start with the recommendation on the little one that's bending over APS. Does that need to be specified in our approval that we would concur with a recommendation to remove that little secondary limb? Or
Chair Clark and Commissioner McGill, the pruning of trees is, setback trees is not the purview of the commission.
Okay. And then I guess the other question I have really relates to the branches. I think they referenced a 200-pound branch hitting APS. Is that, I mean, how did the committee address that concern, and is there a reasonable mitigation?
Chair Clark and Commissioner McGill, the committee determined that there can be some remedial pruning on the tree to decrease the chances of additional branches falling, and advised that with regular pruning, the tree could be kept in a condition where it would be unlikely that additional branches would fall.
Is that the same recommendation for the branch that's hanging over the house and causing the leaves and the fire danger? That if that was pruned, that we could prevent that? Is that the thinking there?
Chair Clark and Commissioner Martinez-Cohen, the committee didn't comment on that, but they did comment through pruning that the concerns could be alleviated. They didn't specifically discuss the branch over the roof, but staff did discuss it with them and discuss the possibilities of cutting that branch back within the limits of the municipal code.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess I have one more question. After you guys discussed the sort of recommendation to prune, how was the property owners amenable to that? Did they have a strong reaction either way? Oh, they do. Okay. If they're going to speak, then they can answer that.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't realize.
I had a question, Mr. Downing, before we move on to our speaker. When a city resident contacts you with concerns for safety of property or life in regards to falling branches, what are the criteria you look at in that particular tree to determine whether or not it's a risk or not? Is it age or size or weather condition?
Chair Clark and Commissioners, when an arborist looks at a tree for hazards, they have to be able to find three things to be true to determine that a hazard exists. One of those is the part of the tree that's most likely to fail has to be large enough to cause damage if it fell and hit something. The second is there has to be a target. In this case, obviously, there's targets. And the third is there has to be a visible defect which precludes the safety of that tree or plant part. In inspecting this tree, really the concerns are dead branches more than the live branches, and the live branches could be pruned in such a way to lessen their degree of extension to bring the tree back in smaller so that it isn't so far reaching. Those actions should preclude any sizable branches falling from the tree.
Thank you. Commissioner McGill?
I'm sorry, one last question. It's kind of a follow-up to the branch dropping. In the conversations with the homeowner in your own inspections, is there one of the two trees that is a greater culprit than the others, than the other? And the reason I'm asking the question is I'm wondering if there has been any conversation towards approving removal of one tree and not both, and would there be a rational reason to do that?
Chair Clark and Commissioner McGill, the homeowners expressed concern over both trees for losing branches. They expressed additional concern for the tree that has the two trunks because it physically leans over the public roadway more than the other one. They did not specify which tree had produced more branches than the other.
Okay, and we do have a speaker on this item. It's Ms. Sherry Cutting.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, and you too, Mr. Downey. my voice. I'm sorry.
Could you pull the microphone down?
Hoarse
There.
for quite a while. Sorry about that. One thing that surprises me, Mr. Downey didn't mention, you'll have it in the write-up, the stone, it protects both the street and it holds these trees back. It's a retaining wall, but it's about 4.5 feet tall. I don't know how tall retaining walls are meant to be, but in the picture you can see that it's cracked, and today it is even more cracked. The big crack is placed right where Mr. Downey is talking about the trunk that could be, I believe, entirely removed. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
I believe you said that the trunk that is leaning over the most broken and cracked part of this wall can be removed.
We need to make sure that the pruning would not be beyond the definition of significant alteration. I'm not at a place right now to make that determination. I would be happy to meet with you afterwards to look at that and discuss it with you in more detail.
Okay, well, I'm considering the form that I received, attachment 6, and it says the committee recommends denying the removal of the trees located within the front setback. The committee noted that there could be benefit from the removal of the smaller stem of the identified multi-stemmed tree. Is that what you mean?
They made that comment. We can't really go into discussion at this point.
We had a lengthy conversation with Mr. Downey, thank you, but we did not speak to any other members of the staff. We've spoken to no one else since then. So my question is, please consider, my biggest fear is that not just the one smaller branch that you see, trunk that you see there, but the whole tree is going to break through that retaining wall. And if it does that, it will go all the way across both lanes of traffic, as well as hit electrical lines and a Cox transformer box. My second question is pretty much taken care of in terms of clarifying what it is you mean by the third or closest to the street trunk. We will get that clarified at some other time.
Ms. Cutting, you're to be talking to us right now. It's your chance to tell us, not
I will wait for Mr. Downey's clarification of what they mean about keeping or removing part of that tree.
Okay, and he'll be happy to do that. He'll contact you this week after the meeting and follow up with you on your questions to make sure everything gets answered.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
For you, sorry. I was just curious if you, over the years, have met with an arborist about pruning the tree and gotten any advice or quoting on what could be done to sort of mitigate some of the issues that you're having.
We have a number of them. Richard Mason is no longer with Bartlett Tree, but we consulted with him. We've lived in the area for a little over 5 years. The second one would be Lou from Arbor Services. I'm sorry, I don't remember his last name. But yes, it was Richard Mason who said we should look into the possibility of having them removed, or at least the front tree with the 2 leaders, because they're only going to get bigger. The root system is only going to put more force on that retaining wall. But I don't have this in writing. Lou was kind enough on the day of the January 9 terrible storm that caused the mudslide in Montecito. The winds were pretty ferocious on the APS, and it was an extraordinary large branch.
Thank you. Thank you.
But it was not from that tree.
So have you not had the tree trimmed in the last 5 years that you've owned the property? Okay, that's...
Because it's such a busy street, you have to get all sorts of permission to stop the traffic, direct it another way.
I just needed it, whether it's been trimmed or not.
And can I ask one quick question? The real concern with the branches is the tree that's leaning more over the APS, is that right?
Yes.
And I drove by there this morning, but I didn't really register how much further back the one tree was from the retaining wall than the other. Can you answer that question?
Gosh, maybe somewhere between 5 and 6 feet. I'm guessing, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have something to say? Yeah. So, thank you for getting up and speaking about your tree. We appreciate that. And with that being said,
I would make a motion that we partially approve, that we concur with the street tree recommendation to deny the removal of the 2 trees, but that the homeowner work with staff that we would approve the removal of the leader that's coming off the second tree, if that is correct. Okay.
Second.
did you need to say something?
We can discuss now.
Yeah. Would you like to discuss that?
Yeah, I would, if just briefly. I guess I'm concerned enough with the homeowner's concerns to wonder if it isn't worth spending a little bit more time with staff and the homeowner talking about a partial approval wherein the tree with the 2 leads that's closer to APS is removed, but the one that's further back is not.
My comment to that, I feel like maybe first they should try pruning back the tree and removing the one part that the committee noted there would be a benefit of removal of, and then look at something like that. I don't know. I think pruning should be tried first. That's my feeling.
I would have to agree with that. This is a skyline tree that is really important to the community. These 2 trees are. And so I would concur that pruning's important. Having a large eucalyptus tree where I work, we prune it regularly to keep it safe, and it's just part of the obligation of that tree.
Yeah. And when we look at our forest, we all want to stay safe. We want our property to be safe. But if we take down every single tree because there's a risk of a branch falling, Santa Barbara wouldn't look the way it does today. So I agree that pruning is a viable first option. And we had a motion, and it was...
I'll second the motion.
Thanks.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, the next item on your agenda is 4100 block of Calle Real. The street tree
Mr. Downey, can I interrupt you real quick? I forgot to say something in the beginning of this.
I apologize.
Any action of the Parks and Recreation Commission made pursuant to Santa Barbara Municipal Code, Chapter 15.20, tree planting and maintenance, et cetera, may be appealed to the City Council within 10 days, according to provisions of the Municipal Code. So that is an appealable decision.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, the next item on your agenda is 4100 Calle Real, the 4100 block of Calle Real. The street tree master plan does not yet designate trees for this block. The development that occurred adjacent to it did plant trees in tree wells along this section that are sycamore trees. We are looking at opportunities to plant trees now that we're planting trees again. This is one area that we were looking at specifically because there are several vacancies. So staff had the committee go through the process and make recommendations to designate a tree. They looked at the site. They felt that a native tree would be important to that stretch of road, and their recommendation is to have the commission designate Quercus tomentia island oak, or Catalina island oak, for the 4100 block of Calle Real.
I have one question. It's just kind of out of curiosity. It says existing species profile, bloodgood plain. Why is it named that, and what does that mean?
Chair Clark and Commissioner Martinez-Cohen, that part of the form is to inform people of what exists out there currently. Has nothing to do with what is designated, but the bloodgood plane tree is a specific variety of London plane tree that has a specific fall color. So it's just a variety of the tree.
It gets red. Is that why? It's
Yes.
an interesting name.
I would move that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation to designate the Quercus tomentella for the 4100 block of Calle Real.
Aye.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, the last item on the agenda for trees is the block of Penn Place. It is a 1 block long street that is in the process of being annexed into the city. There's a project adjacent to this that is proposing street trees as part of their project. This block also has not yet been designated, so the committee reviewed the parkway situation and determined that Coast Live Oak would be well suited to the area. It is a bit rural there, so it looks like it would fit well. So the committee recommends that Penn Place be designated Coast Live Oak.
Questions or comments? Would anyone like to entertain a motion?
I move that we approve the proposed change to the street master plan for Penn Place and designate Quercus agrifolia Coast Live Oak.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I think that concludes our street trees. Okay.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, your next item is the Director's Report. I would suggest, given the time where we are and the fact that we have a number of members of the public, that we take that at the end of the meeting and move into item 6, which relates to looking for sites for a new police station.
Okay. All right, let's proceed with that item.
Chair Clark and Commissioners, we have Brad Hess, who is the official project manager for this project, to do the presentation. I would also like to acknowledge that we have Police Chief Lori Lunau here, and we have our interim Fire Chief Lee Waldron here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to give you an update on the police station and where we are with site selection. So the plan for this afternoon is to give you a brief history, to give you our current status, and then to inform you of where our next steps are. And just so you know, we are still in the middle of this process, so we don't have all the answers, but happy to answer questions at the end. So to orient you, the existing police station is on Figueroa Street between Anapamu and Figueroa. That's outlined in blue. The annex building is outlined in red. And there are 2 other buildings not as part of the police department that aren't shown. One is the Animal Control Building, which is behind Fire Station 3 over on Sola Street, and the Dispatch Center in the Granada Garage. So this building was built in 1959 for a staff of about 85. It's an essential services facility. It's open 24/7. And we currently have about 211 officers and staff. As I noted, it's pretty fragmented. These guys do an amazing job, but they're also operating out of 4 different locations. So the idea is to bring them all under one roof. But there are several building deficiencies. Even though it is safe, there are space and operational deficiencies. There are infrastructure deficiencies such as plumbing and electrical, and a lot of requirements in seismic building codes have been upgraded since 1959. So it is safe, but it needs to be better. It needs to be in a up to code, up to standard building. There's some soil contamination in the parking lot left over from some fuel tanks, and there are multiple accessibility issues throughout the building. So some project history. As you can see, this has been going on for quite some time. Back in 1986, 91, and 98, there were studies about expansion. And some of that was in preparation for a bond measure that was put forth in 1999. It was voted down for a new station, so that put a big pause on any future plans. $20 million was earmarked for this from the redevelopment agency. And so in 2011, an ad hoc subcommittee was formed, and they concluded a new building is definitely the best path forward. They, as part of how to best spend that money well, they did a needs assessment study, and they concluded again that a new location is the best path forward. This project took another hit at that point with the dissolution of the redevelopment agency, so there was no longer that funding. So between then and now, there's been improvements to the building as it's old and you need to keep it going. One of those changes was to move the call center to the Granada Garage. And then in 2017, Measure C passed, creating a funding source for this project. I was brought in late April to start that process, and a consultant selection for the design was made. And here's our local architect, Brian Cornell from Cornell Collective. I'm sure you're familiar with his works. He's what I would call a landmark architect in this town. He's done the Cottage Hospital, the Ridley Chew Cancer Center, the DA building, Santa Barbara Bank and Trust, and on and on. We're thrilled that he's on our team, and feel very, very honored that he gets to do this. We have a technical architect, which is McLaren, Wilson, and Lowry, MWL. They are definitely the national experts in police stations. Jim McLaren has developed and built over 300 police stations nationally. So he has been the expert in this area for quite some time. And again, we're thrilled that he's on our team. These guys were they were primarily responsible for all of the programming that went into phase 1. And programming is basically collecting all of the information, operational, space needs, everything that needs to go into a building, they figure out. They distill that down into a comprehensive spreadsheet, and that's what we use basically as our framework going forward. So it's a very critical part of the process. And these guys were great. They're experts, obviously. But more than that, they made everyone feel incredibly comfortable, especially the officers, because they're speaking the same language. They understand exactly what they're doing. So, again, very, very excited that they're part of the team. And that brings us to our current status, which is site selection. So using that site selection criteria that was developed in phase 1, as well as we started the CEQA process, California Environmental Quality Act, we are going to have some community workshops and some outreach meetings held in November, the November 7th, 13th, and 15th. Those notices actually just went out today. And then hopefully by the end of this year, the site that is selected will be clear. We would recommend that as staff back to the City Council along with the ad hoc committee members. And we're hoping that first quarter of 2019 a site will be selected. And then we can go into phase 3, which is design. So here are our ideal parameters. About a 70,000 square foot building, approximately 250 secured parking spots. That's for all the fleet vehicles as well as staff and officers' personal vehicles. And then depending on how everything works out in terms of public community space, ideally we would look for 80 public spaces, but space is going to be tight. So if it's not on site, it would be in an adjacent lot or other public parking area. But should everything be on one site? Absolutely. That's ideal. We want these officers to work in an incredibly efficient system, not just a building, but a system. And having everyone under one roof is absolutely the goal. But there might be site limitations that limit that, so we need to be willing to compromise. So that's what we're looking at now, and that's why we're studying it. So here's our site criteria that was established again under phase 1. It's not rocket science. It's pretty straightforward. It's everything from the lot size to height, zoning, setbacks, flood zone. But I'll draw your attention to the last 2 items in each column. One is the downtown corridor. This is a critical item. As we looked at all of the city-owned properties and really looked at all of the opportunities throughout Santa Barbara, really it came down to we need to be downtown. And it's not just because it's close to the courthouse or convenient for them, but it's really where the center of activity is. So that was one factor that led us to the 2 sites that we're looking at. And then the other is control of the property. A lot of people over the last few months have given me some wonderful ideas over where we should put that, put the police building, but really we don't own any of these properties. But nonetheless, they are great ideas, but we need to start with properties that we own. So unfortunately, none of these will work out, but I wanted to put it up there so that if you had a question later of, have you guys thought of, then hopefully it's one of these. The city sites that we've considered that we've also eliminated, first is the Parks and Recreation and Facilities offices, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It's on Laguna Street, and it's called Laguna for a reason. It's in a flood zone, so that eliminated that possibility right away. Second, looking at the Carrillo commuter lot, in addition to it being really actually too small, it's adjacent to Mission Creek. It has a one-way street on one side, and then Carrillo, which pretty much acts like a one-way street on the other, so access is very limited. So that one was eliminated. And hopefully you've understood at this point that the existing police station just isn't going to work. Really, if you think about it, if you want to use that site, it's not even an acre. So I'm not sure it would even feasibly work to if it were a vacant lot. But we'd have to build a secure facility for them to move into while we scrapped the old one, built a new one, and then move them back. So we'd end up building it twice. So it really doesn't, we concur with all the studies that have been done up till now that we need a new location. So brings us to the 2 locations that we are pursuing. One is the Coda commuter lot, and the other is the Louise Lowry Davis 1235 Teen Center Spencer Adams property. Here is the flood zone map. Just so that everyone understands that we did look at that. There's a gray area it's hard to see, but it's down near the Coda commuter lot. That's the 500-year flood zone, and we are out of both of them. So both of these are out of the flood zone completely. Here's the Coda commuter lot. Anyone who's ever been to Farmers Market knows exactly where this is. So you have Coda on one side, Santa Barbara Street on the other. I'd like to point out that the EDD building, the state building where most people park for the farmers market, is just up Santa Barbara Street from that. And I'll come back in a second to make, I guess, just to comment on that a little bit more. This is a 1.6 acre site, so it is on the tight side, but we feel like it's absolutely worth pursuing with all options. Here are the variables that we need to consider. Clearly, there's a parking displacement as it's a commuter lot, so it's commuters as well as city staff. Can everything fit on there? So that's what we're doing right now is really evaluating and studying that. The scope and scale relative to everything that's around it, we need to make sure it fits within the area. Access, water table limitations. This is out of the flood zone, but the water table is about 3 to 10 feet below the surface, depending on where you are. Farmers market relocation would obviously be the primary issue. And going back, the possible acquisition of the or use of a portion of this adjacent state property. If you look at the parking lot, basically what we are trying to acquire or either purchase or use is half of that parking lot. So it'd be the half of the parking lot that's closest to the red line. And it's 0.4 acres, and it would do an amazing job in terms of just freeing up the space for a little bit better design. So we're really pursuing that. We hope that that can come through, but that's one of the two options for this site. And then it takes us to the Louise Lowry Davis, 1235 Teen Center, Spencer Adams property. This is 3.2 acres. If you look at the red rectangle that's surrounding the lawn bowling facility, that is about the same size as the Coda lot. So you can see that this one obviously provides more space, certainly more options in terms of design and layout, but it also comes with its own set of variables, which are many. Parking displacement, I don't think it's so much an issue of Louise Lowry and the Teen Center as much as what it also provides for the community around it. The seniors in the area, as well as people in the evenings, definitely utilize that. Historic structures, one is a structure of merit, the other is eligible for that designation. So what do we do with those buildings? Do we leave them? Do we relocate them? Again, scope and scale on that lot. What is the best layout? What makes the most sense? Replacement of park use. So if we were to go down this road with this site, where could we put the lawn bowling facility that would be as good, if not better, than what they have now? Parking needs. Clearly, a structure and surface parking. There's a little bit more space. There is more space on this site, but it still needs to be assessed as to what the best layout is. This is a zoned park. So per our charter, this requires a vote of the people. So the earliest we would be able to put this on the ballot would be next November. So this property creates I would call it a delay in being able to move forward. So it's definitely one of the variables, for sure. That is a time crunch. And then if I'm not stating the obvious, it's not easy to acquire parkland for another use in this town. It's our parks are cherished, and we don't want to change them. We understand that. We also understand that we're looking right now as objectively as we can, not subjectively, as to where is the best site for the next 50 years. Not the next year, but the next 50 years for an essential facility. And so this is certainly an emotional issue. I see a sea of blue out here that is for the lawn bowlers, so this is definitely an issue that I know strikes many in the heart. And and yet I also need everyone to understand that we're trying to look at this objectively as much as we can at this point. So what are our next steps? Well, we're going to be doing a dual path for our design. We're going to be pursuing both sites equally, looking at the massing studies for both sites, how everything can lay out, really trying to create the best design for each location so that it's clear which site ends up being the best. We'll be doing layouts, not just for entry and security, but circulation, for access. We're doing environmental assessments for both sites as well. DUDEC is doing those for us. And we will continue to have discussions, hopefully, with the state of California for the Ortega property. So after all that, how do we actually make the decision? So it's a mix of these variables. There's function, there's cost, there's time, and each of these sites has a mix of these. But which site is best will definitely become clear as we look at it and evaluate all of the variables, not just one or two, but all of them have to be studied and evaluated. Brian is working diligently with his team, and we're really trying to make the best decision on this. So part of that is public input. So as I alluded to earlier, we're having some public outreach meetings. This is twofold. One, it's not a lecture. It's not like this, actually, where there's someone presenting up front. It's actually a process where people will be able to come through and see and ask questions in a more intimate setting, one-on-one or in small groups, where they can understand the entire process, or they can just come and look at the one part that they're interested in, but ask questions about that one part. So those meetings are on November 7th, 13th, and 15th. The Faulkner Gallery is on the 7th, the Franklin Center is on the 13th, and La Cumbre Junior High is on the 15th. They're all from 5:15 to 7. And if you can make them, just come and learn about the process. Again, we're soliciting feedback from the public as much as we are trying to share what we're doing. So thanks for this opportunity to update you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Who would like to start with any questions?
I have a question. Thank you for your presentation. Given that it's 2018 and things are done by technology and remotely, could you explain why it's necessary to build such a big station?
Chair Clark and Commissioner Lesnar Buxton, I apologize if I mess up your names in advance. Why do we need such a big station is basically what your question is.
Yes, in this time of 2018 where we can work from anywhere.
Okay, so where we can work from anywhere in 2018, why do we need such a big station? That's a great question. Well, you can take a crack at this too if you'd like. The reality is operational needs. There's a lot going on in police work that's not just about desk work. I'm sure you've all seen a police officer's car. It's filled with computers as much as it is with anything else. So there's a lot more to police work now than actually there ever was. Not everyone needs a desk. So there's the technology aspect of this where there's going to be open work settings for them to do works. But that many people requires a large building. You have so many different services that are going to be under one roof. It's just a space requirement for each of those services. Everything from a shooting range to a forensics lab to the different departments to, it goes on and on. So would you like to add anything to that? Okay. Does that answer your question well enough?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a related question while we're on the topic of capacity and space. You mentioned 211 officers. Is that, I know there was a lot of positions open and a lot of moving pieces about what's fully staffed look like. I'm curious, it sounds like you've done some analysis on this already, but I'm curious to hear more about how you believe the space will be adequate for the future and the years to come, and sort of what elements have been thought of as far as, we're doing this is a long time coming, and it's probably not going to get done again for a long time too. So how do we sort of get the most out of it, make the bang for our buck, but also plan the most for the future that we can?
Chair Clark, Commissioner Martinez-Cohen, we are planning on building this to be as flexible a building as possible. So as few walls as possible, putting the essential services in the center so you stack all of those restrooms and meeting rooms so that the space around it can change if it needs to. We're hoping to be able to adapt to whatever policing looks like over the next 50 years. We've heard it mentioned that maybe there's more of a citizen type of or unsworn officer type of policing. the building may change for a need that we actually can't even foresee at this point. But we want to build it in such a way that it can do that without tearing out walls, without tearing out infrastructure. So we will build it to be as flexible and to adapt as much as possible in the next 50 years.
Okay, and are they fully staffed? That was the staffing question. I just was curious.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Commission. Staffing is a fluid thing within the police department, as you know. Those 211 positions were full-time positions that include civilians and sworn staffing. A few months ago, we were at roughly 98% of that number, but we've seen some retirements. So off the top of my head, I'd say we're at about maybe 92%. But what isn't documented in that number is our part-time officers, employees, which include a bunch of record staff and our volunteers. So that number, as Brad mentioned, I expect to increase with our use of volunteers. We started a volunteer program last year. We're doubling those 10 to 20. I think we can manage about 50 volunteers to help give the public the best response that we can. But what I really do think that we've got dialed in this process with the right architects is that view of looking how policing is changing and maximizing those spaces to be shared space and to plan for the future. We have a property room that we have to keep secure for chain of evidence, as well as our crime lab. So there's certain things that we cannot fluctuate with. Those have to be very secured facilities, as well as our holding cells and things like that have to meet state standards. So for what we have planned, I believe we've maximized the use. There could be some trends that come up, but the way that this building is being built will allow us to grow or shrink different operations. But we do operate 24/7. We have records that are there, employees on the station property for most of the night. So to say that, unfortunately, we can't get out like the rest of the world can with technology, although we do capitalize on what we do have now. That answer?
Chair Longstreet?
My questions are probably more to Parks and Recreation staff, because of course that's our focus here. Everybody knows we need a new police station. That's not a question at all. But we have a property that I think we need to be really clear on how it's used now. I know it's housing our senior services, what the usage is, the teen center. It's a lot of what happens there right now. Ms. Zachary, can you give us maybe even some numbers?
Chair Clark and Commissioner Longstreet, and we have other staff from the department, including Judith McCaffrey and Jason Bryan here. In fact, your subsequent presentation goes into that in more detail. The Davis Center provides a range of services to seniors on a daily basis, on a regular basis, including the senior lunch program. And I would say that some of these things, we basically help initiate and coordinate. We have co-sponsorships and partnerships with other agencies that come in. So the Community Action Commission actually does that senior lunch program. We also actually bring in contractors that do programs as well. And then there are groups of people that have played checkers there for years and have done other things there for years because it's been their destination. You will remember that we've actually done a redesign and a redevelopment of that building to enhance its use, both as a community destination and then also to support the department. That is on hold pending this discussion and the site selection. And then we have obviously the Teen Center, which is currently operated by PAL, but once upon a time was operated by our department before the economy took a turn. And it serves, I think, up to 50 kids at any time. And then we have the Lawn Bowls facility, and I will say that I did meet with them because we knew this was coming down, so they have their share of concerns. That's been there for 81 years. 81 years, I think so. So it's fluid in terms of whether it's daily use or occasional use or a destination for a certain reason. And so it could change at any one time. If Judith wants to actually add specific numbers, we can do that. It is in your subsequent report.
Thank you. And when this park became parkland, right, that was a while ago. How was this dedicated, and what comes with this kind of a change? Because I've been on long enough, I've only seen us acquire parkland. We didn't take it to the ballot when we wanted to dispose of some much smaller pieces. Granted, we're not disposing at this point, but the challenges of that, please.
Chair Clark and Commissioner Longstreet, this property has a very long history in Santa Barbara. Before what was the Recreation Department was created in 1929, but it was the original building where the city had a recreation department that it collaborated with the school district. So it was old school property. The city's first high school, Santa Barbara High, was located on the site. The school district deeded the property to the city and for the purpose of continuing park and recreation purposes. And so its use has evolved since then. And, you know, once upon a time there was an old wood gym where they played basketball. So it has changed with that. Because it's zone PR, as Mr. Hess indicated, it requires a vote of the people to approve a change in use to something other than a park or recreation purpose. And that's designated in the city's charter.
Okay, would this budget, if it goes forward, would there be resources to take care of the needs that are being displaced? Is that part of the deal? Because what I see is, as we look at any park, we talk about replacing the parking. We're not talking about replacing the activities people do. So that's something I would be curious about.
Chair Clark, Commissioner Longstreet, I think I'd like to say that we will commit to meeting and mitigating the impacts of as many of those as possible. I'm not sure I said that correctly, but I can't speak to the budget at this point, but I will say if there's a service that is being provided, then we wouldn't want to lose it. If there's an activity that's being done on the site, we wouldn't want to lose that. So we are committed to the resources that property provides. It just may not look the same, but we don't want to lose any of those. We understand the importance of them.
Because, there is a lot of impacts on our parks right now, and they're coming from more than this project. They're citywide impacts, development impacts, all kinds of things. So I think, for me, I have to get really protective of the open space we have. And so that's more of a comment. But that I would be interested in those mitigations being really spelled out.
In line with that, we don't want to lose services, but it's not as easy to shuffle senior services somewhere else because that's a segment of the population that's not as mobile. And a lot of them have found their community at the Davis Center because it's close to home and it becomes their home. They're not going to be able to go to the next vacant piece of property that we reestablish services at. Something to think about.
One last. This is the third time I've seen you. So my questions are now developing out of what I heard at NAC and things. Can you talk a little bit about the neighborhood impacts? The two properties are in very different locations as far as neighborhood impacts currently. It was brought up that all the senior housing that's across the street and around that, the Davis Center. What are the impacts of putting in a 24-hour operation, people coming and going in a neighborhood? Anything to add?
Chair Clark and Commissioner Longstreet, I neglected to mention that Sarah Isa, who's also working on this project, is here, and Mr. Hess is just conferring with her regarding what she's working on as it relates to evaluating the impacts, and both when you think of it as short-term construction and then long-term, which is operations. And that's very much part of the analysis that's being undertaken to look at these two sites. So she will have more information related to that.
So that'll come when you get to the neighborhood, when you get to traffic and all of those. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I have one more comment. I would, imagine all those impact studies are yet to be done. I guess my comment, I have two comments. One would be that I feel like the location of the existing police station in relation to these two proposed locations seems to me to have similar neighborhood impact. I actually had a friend who lived right across the street from the one on Figueroa, and it's really, it's in a residential neighborhood. Both of them are, both of the ones that they're suggesting and the existing one is. They seem somewhat similar as far as what they're impacting already. The second thing is, I guess, I don't know if you're taking these kind of comments now or you want to hear this type of feedback, but I think given the complexity, difficulty, public process, the programming that's at the Teen Center and the Louise Lowry, and given the historic nature, it seems like that one is just a tougher one altogether. But I understand that you do need to analyze both. But at this point, I guess my feedback is it seems like the Coda Street one seems a lot more feasible. I don't know if that's probably obvious feedback that you might already be getting, but just wanted to state that for the record.
My question is around what will happen to the current site where the police station is, and if there will be a swap of use or something like that in the proposal to the public in terms of the parkland.
Chair Clark and Commissioner, is it Armbruster? Okay. That is one of the things that we're actually studying. We're not neck deep in that study yet, but it's an asset for the city. We're trying to figure out what the highest and best use of that is. So I don't know. As far as exchange, as far as a mixed use, as far as scrapping the whole thing, as far as moving different departments in there are a lot of ideas that we're churning through and studying, but we're really focused on picking a site at this point, and then that will end up being part of the equation.
And Commissioner Perry.
Same sentiments. You're focused on parkland. I'm wondering if there can be a replacement written into your ballot initiative that would address the loss of that real estate, whether it be the PD site or other city land that might be used to replenish the loss of services. Specifically, can it be part of the ballot initiative?
Chair Clark, Commissioner Perry, that is definitely one of the variables that we need to look at. I can't commit to anything at this point just because we're in the middle of it, but it is absolutely one of the things that we're looking at.
And so I think now we can move to, thank you very much. Oh, did you want to say? Commissioner McGill?
I would have to say most of the questions I had have already been asked. But I guess intuitively it makes sense why you'd want to have a police station downtown. But if you were to expand your definition of a downtown out, your catchment area went out, I don't know how much further, a bit further. Are there some sites that were almost close enough but not quite within your definitions that should have been considered or could have been considered?
Chair Clark, Commissioner McGill, not that I'm aware of.
And then on to, again, into location of services. Has there been work, or will there be work aside from the public comment period to really understand the services that are being provided now and how important that the Louise Davis location is to those services. Do they need to be downtown? Should they be downtown? How far out can they be and still be of value to the community they serve?
Chair Clark, Commissioner McGill, yes, that's absolutely what we need to do. It's part of this process, is understanding as we get to, let's just say we're leaning toward a property, the more we understand what the variables good and bad are, we need to understand all of those details. So replacement of services, replacement of, or mitigating that impact, all of that is being studied right now. So I'm sorry to be vague because it's a great question, but it requires specific answers and it requires specific and diligent details that I don't have. So my apologies for that, but we're just in the middle of it.
Yeah. Sorry. Understanding mitigations, not only what they are, but how they're being funded is critical to the success of this project. I think particularly if it's the Louise Davis Center. Obviously, that's where the energy is going to be, is around that decision. But it's not, funding is going to be important, but also I think we all know that elections can be surprising and have surprising results. And I suspect it could prove difficult to just have an election without the community fully understanding what the alternatives are or the mitigations are, and having that in the ballot.
Anybody else? And we'll have time for more discussion, I believe, after public speaking. So we'll move on to the public speakers, and we'll start, I tried to alphabetize, with Sharon Adams.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, one of the big draws to Santa Barbara for tourists and residents alike is the abundance of open spaces and parks. Sidewalks shaded by trees are everywhere, connecting our neighborhoods. These show that this community cares about quality of life. My husband and I are happy to live only 1 block from Spencer Adams Park. Now it seems our park is threatened. Spencer Adams Park is unique, as you know. Teenagers hang out at the teen center. Seniors eat free lunches there and play games. Special Olympic athletes practice bocce under the shade of the Moreton Bay fig tree. And for 81 years, community members have enjoyed the sport of lawn bowls every week, year-round, on the bowling greens. Nearby apartment residents walk and relax on the grass, sometimes with their dogs. Office workers take breaks there, have their lunch, get some fresh air and sunshine. This downtown open space is always vibrant and vital with activities. As you know, this downtown park is surrounded on 3 sides by houses and apartment buildings. But now, we have a proposal for a multi-story police station and garage, which would eliminate this park. We already, as residents, endure loud fire engine sirens from the nearby station and ambulances rushing noisily to and from the hospital. We will welcome the environmental assessment and the scope and scale study for this structure in our residential neighborhood.
Thank you. I wish we all had more than 2 minutes, but
We're grateful for this commission. You are our advocates. Please keep our park.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Corinne Hughes.
Thank you for listening to us today. About a week ago, I stood near a sign, and pardon me for using my cell phone, I took a picture of it, and I'd like to read it to you. Spencer Adams Clubhouse. This building was erected through the generosity of Spencer L. Adams and dedicated on this day to citizens of Santa Barbara for recreation purposes. John T. Ricard, Mayor, Berkeley B. Blake, Chairman Park Commission, and Thomas McDermott, Chairman Recreation Commission, and it was posted on December 16th of 1956. I've never been an athlete, but I've learned to lawn bowl. I've gotten to know a lot of white hair people who look wonderful in blue, and we have some people in their 90s. We've got my nephew, 1.5, throwing a lawn bowl. It's a wonderful area downtown for people to relax and enjoy. We ask you to please consider our plea. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Linda Love.
I've lived in Santa Barbara since 1969, and I really know that we need a new police department, so I have sympathy for that. I also want to thank the Parks and Recreation Department for having fabulous parks in Santa Barbara. Our city is composed of many small communities, each one dear to its residents. The community around the Victoria de la Vina area is particularly lovely. One can walk, not drive, but walk, to play chess, to play bridge, to have a free meal if you're a senior, and to lawn bowl. I think the new police building on this site would disrupt so much. We are an aging society, and our elders need to stay active and social. Please consider a site that would not have such a negative impact on seniors. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Napier.
My name is Janet Napier, and I'm the president of the Santa Barbara Lawn Bowls Club. And I'm here to speak against the new police station being located at the Davis Center Lawn Bowls Club and adjacent parking lot. Let me say I do understand the need for a new police station. However, I find the immense size of the proposed building to be totally incompatible with the neighborhood, which, as you know, is largely residential, including many senior citizens. The noise and sirens associated with a police station, both day and night, would not fit with this neighborhood. Spencer Adams Park is one of the few open spaces near downtown with grass, flowers, and trees, a little oasis for fresh air and exercise. And as you're well aware, the Davis Center is a popular place for recreational activities. But most important to me, the Santa Barbara Lawn Bowls Club, founded 81 years ago, is also an historic treasure in the city. Indeed, it was Spencer Adams, a lawn bowler, who gave his name to the park after making a donation to the city to build the clubhouse. Our club, which has 120 active members, has hosted group events training nearly 700 members of the community to lawn bowl this year alone. Groups from 35 companies or organizations, including employees from both the city and the county of Santa Barbara. Its central location allows many seniors and others to walk or ride their bikes to it, and many working folks to come right after work to lawn bowl. For about 5 years, the 40-member Special Olympics bocce athletes have practiced at our facility, and members of our club constructed bocce courts especially for them. Finally, and I say this with all due respect to the police department, if the city does decide to place on the ballot in the November 2019 election to undesignate Spencer Adams Park as a park, all of our members will be working very hard to ensure a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very well said. Would anyone dare to? Okay. Okay, we're done with public comment. Would anybody like to comment after that?
I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for coming and speaking your mind. It's really important to hear your passion and why you think that. And I also want to thank the design team for coming up with all these options. I know it couldn't have been easy. That's obviously why the Louise Lowry Center is on the table, because there was nowhere else. So I respect the process that you're going through. I'm glad that we're doing it. I do understand that we need to get more information, but I think that it's good to bring it all out to the public very soon, sooner than later, and I really respect that. So thank you.
Is there any way that we could put the dates of the community workshops back up? Would that be something? Because I do encourage members of our community to go to these public workshops and have their say and listen to what you have to say as well.
Yeah.
In the meantime, Commissioner McGill.
I just actually wanted to echo what Chair Clark just said, is we've recently been through a process where a couple of the parks had public comments and workshops, and there was a very active engagement from the community, and it was really important for us to understand and hear that. So I just really want to strongly encourage members of the community to participate in the workshops. And as a member of this commission, I will really look forward to understanding the feedback that comes from those workshops, but also how that feedback is incorporated into any qualitative and quantitative assessments of the sites.
And I think also in trying to use objective data in the decision-making process, you do need to get numbers that aren't based on finances, from how many lawn bowlers were served, how many Special Olympians were served, how many lunches were served at the senior center. That's objective data too. Chair.
Parking is one issue to me. I know you need the secure parking for staff and for your vehicles. That's just a given. But the number of public parking spots, I would like to see that somewhat taken out of consideration, because it is in the zone of benefit of the parking district, and we're giving that kind of zone of benefit to ADU projects that are going in. And therefore, our police department ranks over, public use ranks over private developer housing. So I really think that sort of needs to be taken out of the equation, and both sites have adequate public parking within a block of them. So that would be one comment I would have over the whole general project, is that we not overbuild that parking. There will be a loss that may need to be mitigated well, there is a loss at both sites that would need to be mitigated, but we all know this needs to happen, and I think our job up here is to make sure that we serve the downtown core and that we preserve our historic sites also. So I think, we're not the end all of the historic site aspect of it. I am sure the Historic Landmarks Commission will weigh in, probably in a much more vocal way than even we will on the parkland. But those are the considerations. I think we all know that the Davis Center, Spencer Adams, comes with a lot more hurdles than Coda Street. Coda Street is Mr. Cornell's hurdle to make it work. Not ours. So, I think both locations, I know you really did a lot of work to get here, and I don't envy your position on this. I do want to see this project go forward for the community. I think right now we are all vulnerable, having dispatch in one place and animal control in another, and all the things that happen. So Those are my comments. But I do really am protective of our downtown open space.
So you guys are here to protect and serve, and we're here to protect and serve, and we're going to work together and make sure that we all protect and serve. Thank you.
Will this come before us again as it moves through the process?
So, Chair Clark and Commissioner Longstreet, the importance of tonight's presentation, as well as the one to the Neighborhood Advisory Council, which occurred 2 weeks ago. I wasn't at that meeting, but I would say is because one of the sites is a park and recreation property, and as you can see from the slide up there, there will be further discussion. Police and Fire Commission update will be tomorrow. And then really the general public in Santa Barbara, as well as the folks that live around these two sites, are going to be reached via the public outreach meetings. And so work has been done to do direct mail. To reach those folks, the folks around the Davis Center, Spencer Adams property, as well as the Coda lot. Ultimately, as Mr. Hess indicated, the goal is to get back to council in early 2019. Again, another public opportunity. And then depending on what the decision is, there's many more steps that need to get taken to actually design a building and do the technical studies. And those types of issues come before the commission for various reasons. Certainly, if it's a park property, and then even down to trees, which you do at the beginning of every meeting, as you can imagine. So yes, you will see this again. When, how? We're just at the beginning.
Mr. Hess, would you mind emailing me a copy of your PowerPoint? I'd like to go over it again. Thanks.
So, Chair Clark and Commissioners, if you want to steamroll into the next item, we can do that if you're interested.
I have a question. Did the commission have the jurisdiction to write a letter to council about this issue if and when it's appropriate?
Commissioner Lesner-Buxton, if I understand your question, does the commission have the opportunity to communicate its opinion about this? Absolutely.
When the time is appropriate.
Yes, the commission does have that opportunity. As the Parks and Recreation Commission, you're appointed by the City Council, and you're here to both advise the department, but also the council on matters as they pertain to the city. Mm-hmm. And as it moves forward in the process, that's something that we can certainly bring back to you. And as a commission, you can make a determination of how you'd like to communicate to council.
Thank you.
So are we going to our active adults report? Does anybody else? So,
good afternoon, Chair Clark and Commissioners. My name is Judith McCaffrey, Recreation Manager. So I'm going to introduce today's presentation. Just a few months ago, you had asked for some more recreation programs reports, and we're coming back to you with another program report, this time about the programs and services offered by the Active Adults and Classes section. And it's certainly very appropriate for tonight's meeting, because we will be talking about programs and services offered at the Davis Center. I can answer questions about the Teen Center and lawn bowling and some of the other programs we offer for seniors. But as an introduction, I'd just like to start by saying a few words about Parks and Recreation and its many benefits. And tonight I'm going to specifically say the word recreation, but when I say that, I'm going to mean parks and recreation. So recreation benefits individuals, it benefits families, and it benefits communities. And as research done by the National Recreation and Parks Association has proven, the benefits are endless. And that would be a whole presentation tonight, but I just want to mention a few that are important. Recreation brings people together by providing opportunities for social interaction. Recreation empowers, inspires, and motivates individuals. It builds self-esteem. When young people feel good about themselves, they operate more effectively and productively in our communities, in families, and in schools. Recreation builds family unity. Family bonds are strengthened by the sharing of leisure time. And recreation helps provide that work-life balance that all of us are trying to achieve. Recreation reduces stress. It's kind of sad to read that 89% of Americans reported that they often experience high levels of stress. Leisure activities provide people the opportunity to expel their energy and emotions that they aren't able to release in other aspects of their lives. And lastly, sports and recreation activities are the hub of our community's life. So as you know, our City Parks and Recreation Department provides a myriad of enriching and beneficial programs and services, and provides community facilities that serve individuals of all ages and abilities, families, and this community as a whole. So I'd like to invite my colleague next to me here, Jason Bryan, who's our Senior Recreation Supervisor, to tell you about the programs, services, and activities that he provides through the Active Adults and Classes section of the Recreation Division. Jason?
Chair Clark and Commissioners, it's a pleasure to present to you this evening an overview on our section. Our program is headquartered, or our office is headquartered at the Korea Recreation Center, but we have several satellite locations. The presentation is going to follow kind of the written report that you received in your packet. Active Adults works with experienced contractors to offer year-round dance and fitness programming, with most of our classes located at the Korea Recreation Center. Outside a few holidays and the occasional instructor vacation, most of our classes only take a break the last 3 weeks of December when we refinish our hardwood floors at the Recreation Center and take a short holiday hiatus. Our contracted programs include Latin, international, American smooth styles of ballroom dance, Argentine tango, country two-step, line dancing, ballet for youth and adults, modern dance for youth and adults, Zumba with Josette, jazzercise, yoga, and Pilates, and we're always considering new classes to add to our offerings. Instructors typically have at least 5 years of teaching experience, and some have been teaching for decades and have some very impressive credentials, like Sylvia Sykes being a U.S. champion, national dance champion. Contracts are either designated with a rental rate where the contractor is paying us a set amount for the use of the facility, or in a system where the city handles the registration and the instructors are receiving a percentage of fees collected. Typically, it's 65% that goes to the contractor. In fiscal year 2018, more than 6,000 youth and adult registrations were in these programs that we processed the registrations. That does not include the rentals where contractors process their own registrations. In addition to our year-round classes, Active Adults also coordinates several summer camps. This last summer, we oversaw ballet camp, horse riding camp, theater camp, clay camp, hip-hop camp, art from the heart camp, and Kids Cook Camp. Several of these camps take place at satellite locations such as the Hearts Equestrian Center, the Westside Neighborhood Center, and the Chase Palm Park Craft Center. The Korea Recreation Center offers 3 days a week of stretch and tone for senior programming. Table tennis is offered there as well as a monthly tea dance. These programs were specifically designed for senior citizens to serve the senior community. Although open to all adults, most of our contractor classes are also popular with seniors, and those are primarily our dance and fitness classes, but we don't call those senior programs. They're just classes that everyone attends, although there's a lot of seniors in those classes. For senior programming at the Davis Center, they have weekday activities that are primarily intended to serve the senior population. With the exception of a contractor-led Qigong Tai Chi class, these classes are led by volunteers and are either free or at very low cost. The newest addition to the Davis Center programs is an extension of an exercise class called Stretch and Tone that's offered now twice a week at the Davis Center. It's offered 3 times a week at the Carrillo Recreation Center, and we have some seniors now taking that class 5 days a week, which is great. The Community Action Commission also provides a free lunch program Monday through Friday that served approximately 11,000 lunches at the Davis Center last year. Ongoing bridge, Scrabble, chess, knitting, and book clubs allow opportunities for seniors to engage in activities they love while interacting with old friends and making new social connections. In fiscal year 2018, more than 11,000 seniors, and this is a duplicated number estimate, were served through enrichment and fitness programs at both the Carrillo Recreation Center and the Louis Lowry Davis Center, approximately evenly split between those 2 facilities. The Davis Center's location near the Edgerly Senior Apartments, Battistone Foundation Senior Housing, and Garden Court, all within a 1-block radius, makes the facility easily accessible to a large downtown senior population. Active Adults manages co-sponsorship partnerships with both the Santa Barbara Lawn Bowls Club and the McKenzie Park Lawn Bowls Club. The Santa Barbara Lawn Bowls Club is located in Spencer Adams Park, just across from the Louis Lowry Davis Center, and the McKenzie Park Club is located in the upper portion of McKenzie Park. Both clubs assess membership dues to purchase insurance and cover other direct expenses like greens maintenance, equipment, and custodial costs. These clubs have a combined membership of approximately 215 members. The clubs hosted a combined 20 tournaments, welcomed over 1,000 visitors, and offered more than a dozen member special events in fiscal year 2018. Additionally, the Downtown Santa Barbara Club has worked with over 30 organizations to host team-building activities, and as you heard earlier, works with Special Olympics to offer a bocce ball program for their athletes. Santa Barbara is unique in that we have 2 lawn bowls clubs, which provide access to the sport 7 days a week, year-round, weather permitting. The sport of lawn bowling is easy to learn, but difficult to master. It's similar to bocce ball, where each team attempts to get their balls closest to a small white target ball called a jack. Unlike bocce ball, the bowls are not round. They are weighted heavier on one side, and this path curves, and it's a game of subtlety that makes it particularly challenging. Lawn bowling is less strenuous than many other sports, making it particularly accessible to older adults, although the sport can be enjoyed by all ages. One of the great features of this sport and the way it's programmed is that team members are drawn at random for the regular games. This encourages social interaction throughout the entire club membership. The Santa Barbara Arts and Crafts Show is another program administered by the Active Adults and Classes section. The show continues a 53-year tradition of local residents showcasing and selling their arts and crafts in the beautiful beachfront area along Cabrillo Boulevard, starting at State Street and extending past Calle Cesar Chavez. Unlike most arts and crafts shows, this one is non-juried. As long as someone lives in the county and makes the art or craft themselves according to show rules, they have an opportunity to join the show. Staff works with an advisory committee that meets monthly to review policies, set advertising priorities, review incidents, and provide feedback to the Parks and Recreation Department on the administration of the show. The show currently has 154 members. There are vacancies in both the Arts and Crafts section, and new members can screen at any of the monthly meetings. The current fee for the show is $549 a year, which includes a $20 fee for the advertising fund. Show members can participate in 62 shows per year that occur every Sunday and Saturdays of major holiday weekends. That's $8.85 a show to participate in this wonderful special event. In addition to hosting dozens of weekly classes, the Carrillo Recreation Center is available for rental and is the department's largest indoor venue capable of seating up to 300 guests. This historic landmark building makes a great setting for wedding receptions or other family celebrations, corporate and nonprofit events. The facility can also be used for smaller weekday meetings, trainings, and dance studio space can be rented for private lessons or corporate wellness classes. In fiscal year 2018, there are 29 paid rentals, large events on Saturday and Friday nights, accommodating approximately 6,000 guests. Due to a fairly full schedule, most large rentals take place Saturday afternoons and evenings, as there are classes programmed throughout the rest of the week. Adjacent to the Korea Recreation Center's ballroom is the Korea Street Gym, which is rented for basketball, indoor soccer, volleyball, floor hockey, table tennis, and fitness programs. The Korea Gym accommodated approximately 8,000 visitors in fiscal year 2018. With 3 dance studios and the ballroom and the gym, the Korea Recreation Center rarely had all of the rooms used simultaneously. In March of 2018, the smallest of the dance studios was converted to a personal training center. 5 to 6 personal trainers can contract with the department to pay a monthly fee and have access to this fully equipped training center to work one-on-one with clients working to achieve their personal fitness goals. Personal training contracts for the fitness studios were designed for each of the trainers to also offer a free weekly fitness class to the public, which has allowed the Korea Recreation Center to expand its affordable fitness opportunities for community members. We're still in the implementation phase of that because we're just bringing the contractors on board. We currently have 4 personal trainers using the facility, and feedback from their clients has been positive, and from the trainers themselves. I would like to acknowledge recreation specialist Kyle Thum for bringing this new fitness center concept to reality. He was really the driver behind this, and he did a great job. Looking at our revenue that's generated by the Active Adults and Classes section, in fiscal year 2019, you can see that our revenue budget can be split into 4 major categories. And as obvious from the chart here, classes and rentals comprise the bulk of the revenue for the section. Classes and contracts is budgeted at $252,900, rentals at $208,500, the arts and crafts show at $93,600, and the fitness studio at $24,000. The Active Adults and Classes section is supported by 3 full-time and 1 half-time permanent staff members, with the additional support of 9 hourly employees. I know that's a fast presentation, but that is my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions that you have about our section or about any of the topics that we covered.
I don't have any questions, just I've participated in many of the active adult programs over the years, from the contra dancing, the 2-step, the line dancing, to my kids in clay camp and theater camp, and I think they're an invaluable contribution to our community. Thank you. Does anyone else?
Yeah, I would just echo that of how amazing the programs are that you guys run and how valuable they are to the community, and thank you for all of your hard work.
Yeah. It's like you would never have to do the same thing twice unless you really loved it. There's so many opportunities. Thanks.
Plenty to do.
Yeah, it's nice to see the Korea building used now. You know, it's that shining star of what renovation can be. So I look at it now with, and how, I mean, I was at a teen dance before it was renovated where the ceiling tiles were coming down because the kids were bouncing on the floor. So now we have this gorgeous facility and people are using it for multiple things, and that's wonderful. Senior programming, I think that's, it's really a topic that the budget has often been difficult for us to manage that, but I do think it's coming to the time when we need to put seniors in the same, give them the same consideration we give like our after-school programs, because as you know, I work with low-income seniors and they need to get out. They need to have places to go and reasonably priced programs. So I'm glad to see more of them starting up, and that I hope they're well attended and get more popular as time moves on.
Thank you. And congratulations again, Judith, for 15 years. 20. Okay.
Sure. Chair Clark and Commissioners, it's always a great opportunity to tell you what we're about to do, tell you what we've done, and particularly talk about the activities that we do that involve volunteers, because volunteers are really important, not only for getting things done, but also because the investment and the connection that they provide to the spaces that we manage on their behalf. So in the last couple of months, we've had some opportunities to do just that. The Day of Caring occurs every September, and we have different sites that are usually promoted for that event. This last year, we did Day of Caring at the Rancheria Community Garden, which is over on the east side, where a number of volunteers, 30 to be exact, teamed up with our staff and did a tremendous job improving the garden plots and making it look a lot nicer. And those of us that have yards that look sometimes half done or sort of weedy know how wonderful it is when you actually spend some time going in and tidying up and cleaning up. You leave and finish your work with a sense of accomplishment. So that was very successful. We also, and with Jason's presentation about career recreation, we do a free classes week. So I don't know if anybody had a chance to participate, but the free classes week in September was super well attended. 38 programs were offered. 418 people took advantage of them. And just to speak a little bit more to that, based on what Jason presented, you know, we have contractors that provide many of these classes. Why? Because we couldn't staff a department that did that. And it's a good thing because we bring a range of expertise into our facilities to provide services. And so it's very diverse. In working with them, particularly in also the fitness studio, the fact that we have trainers come in and as part of their agreement, they provide one free class a week, gives us the opportunity to introduce people to something new. Maybe they'll then train with that trainer, or they'll go on and do something else. So the free classes week similarly have the opportunity to jump in, try something out. Doesn't cost you a dime, and maybe you come back and you do some more of that. Arroyo Borough Open Space is moving along. If anybody's driven down Las Positas, you've noticed it's tremendously different even from the road. We are at the point where all of the heavy construction work is complete related to the creek, and so plants are going in. With every project that we do like this, starting back with the one we did in Bonnet, and I have to really dig back because I was around then, 16 years ago, something like that, 17 years ago, a while. We have a community planting day, and the one for this site is on November 17th, 9 a.m. I highly encourage you to come out. Usually we get a huge turnout, so actually you don't have to spend a ton of time there. We always set aside a certain place for the volunteer, and then it gives you the opportunity to interact with the site. So please, you're more than welcome to join in that. The Hidden Valley Park, you had a presentation from Tim Burgess about that project. It's moving along, it's being implemented, and when it's done, we'll take you around and you can see the progress there. And then lastly, with Looking Good Santa Barbara and other city departments, we do community cleanup days. There was one in October 13th this year. And historically, it's been focused around making neighborhoods look nicer because sometimes they can get a little rough around the edges, but also street tree planting. And so we haven't done that for many years because of the drought. Because we have spent a lot of time really refining our tree watering strategies so that we're efficient and effective, and you've noticed all the green bags around young trees around town, we really feel it's important to start replanting trees. We've lost well over 1,000 trees since the drought began, and it's time to start replanting because they are so important to our community. So 35 trees were planted as part of that, which kicks us off to our goal. I believe it's 225 this year, so we're trying to get ahead of the curve. Some of those trees will also be planted in conjunction with street-related improvements associated with Measure C. So we think about Measure C in a lot of different ways, where we're trying to take advantage of the streetscape improvements. We're also looking at opportunities to advance the urban forest. So that essentially concludes my report. I'd like to just acknowledge the Commission's consideration of the police station update, and the fact that we've got a ways to go, and the importance of considering all of the impacts and opportunities associated with meeting the police needs, but also meeting the needs of our residents for many years to come.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to adjourn today's commission meeting.